Tee. Welcome to the 2019 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series, where your man Louie Tee aims to break down all 32 teams in the National Football League's 2019 NFL Draft using our baseball grading scale. Single, double, triple, home run. There are no strikeouts here in the Draft Wrap-Up Series, as we cannot tell how these players are going to pan out, and I don't want to discount any of these young men before they get their chance in the National Football League. And so we'll get a score for each and every single player selected in said team's draft. We'll apply bonuses when necessary, get an aggregate score, divide by the number of picks, which will yield us an overall grade for that team's draft. We'll then move on to the next team in the series picked by you. That's right, you, the viewer out there, are in total control, as this is the You Pick format. Simply be the first to leave a comment in the comment section of this video and future videos in this series stating two things: the phrase next and the team you'd like to see next. Some examples would be Saints next, New Orleans next, NO next, New Orleans next, NOLA next, NOLA. You get where I'm going with this, man. As a matter of fact, the next team up in the series is none other than the New Orleans Saints. Now, here's a team last year that showed that they're a true contender. And once I feel like you hit contender status, there aren't as many roster spots available on your football team, especially when you have a veteran group like the Saints do. When you have a quarterback that's pushing 40 like they do in Drew Brees, and you have a roster that's pretty much made up of a bunch of guys that are at the point of their careers where they're looking to win. You got some young players mixed in there as well, and that's how you're supposed to do it. A healthy mix of veterans that can lead the young guys and some young talented players on some cheap contracts. That being said, last year, the Saints had a draft where they lost a number of players in their draft, tried to sneak a few of them onto the practice squad. Teams put claims in for them, snatched up half of their draft, and they were wondering what the hell just happened here. And so they didn't get to develop the players at the level of which they wanted to. They didn't get to have those guys stay around and maybe have them fill voids for them moving forward. But I listened to Mickey Loomis talk about this draft and what the goal was. And look, like I said, they didn't have a lot of roster spots available anyway. And there's so many different draft methods. I talk about this all the time. You've got the bread, eggs, milk, cheese route. You can go, hey, look, I got 6 players that I want to go in and get. I'm going to go grab my 6 and I'm going to get out. That's the list when you just go in, get the item specifically, and come out. Then there's the, the dartboard approach where, hey, I'm just going to take 12 darts, throw them at the board and hope that 7 of them stick. That's the Seattle Seahawks method. Then there's the, hey, I get 7 picks. I've got $100. I'm going to go in the store. I'm going to spend my $100. I'm not going to go over my limit. That's the Los Angeles Chargers method. The Saints went with the Carolina Panthers approach of, hey, let's go in, or Dave Gettleman, I should say. That was his approach until this year with the Giants, when they pretty much blew it up and started from scratch, and he took like 11 players. But generally, they go in, they get 5 or 6 players, and they come out and they keep it moving. And that's been more of the Howie Roseman approach in Philadelphia of late. And so the Saints didn't have a ton of draft capital. We all know about the trade they made last year in the first round to get the edge rusher Marcus Davenport out of UTSA. And so they forfeited their first round pick this year to the Green Bay Packers. And so there wasn't a lot of draft capital for the Saints in this draft. I think of the first 90 picks, they only had 1, I think it was, a draft choice in the first 3 rounds. So it wasn't going to be a ton of movement for them, but they found a way to maneuver their way through the draft, trade up when they felt the need to do so, but still give themselves some flexibility moving forward in the later rounds. And so they were able to come away with a 5-player haul. I think all 5 of these players have a realistic shot at making their roster. We'll see what happens, but I think they got some guys. The first 2 picks in particular were outstanding selections for a team that didn't have a selection until the second round, and really late second round. They weren't supposed to pick, but they traded up. Speaking of which, let's take a look at what they were able to do in this draft. And we start in the first round. Just talked about them trading up all the way from 62 to 48. That's what they did here, to get a guy that they identified as someone that they needed to get their hands on. And so they did exactly that. 48th overall selection, offensive lineman out of Texas A&M, Eric McCoy, gets this thing kicked off for the New Orleans Saints at their 2019 NFL Draft wrap-up. So I listened to Sean Payton talk about this draft as well. And Sean, I said, hey, look, Sean, don't lie to me, man. Because there was a huge retirement along the offensive line. Max Unger called it quits. the center that they had traded for with New Orleans. Remember, in the Jimmy Graham trade, everyone was talking about Jimmy Graham, and maybe the biggest piece to that trade was Max Unger coming back to the Saints in that deal. And he, again, I always talk about the interior offensive line being the most important pieces that the Saints always make sure they keep intact. Because Drew Brees, not a bigger quarterback, needs the space in the interior of the offensive line to keep the integrity of the pocket in its place. And so in order to do that, you have to have stoutness from guard to guard. You can get away with some suspect tackle play if the guard to guard situation is on point. If those guys are keeping the pocket intact and the integrity of the pocket intact, then Drew will just step up if there's a little bit of pressure around the edge. So it is imperative that you keep guard, center, guard intact. And when you lost Max Unger, there was a void along the offensive line, specifically at the pivot position. You needed to address that. And you know, Sean Payton's talking about, well, we went out and got Nick Eason, and that you know, made us feel really good about the center. Stop, don't lie to me, man. All right? You weren't comfortable with Nick Eason. That's why you traded up to get Eric McCoy, all right? Let's stop the nonsense. Speaking of which, you see the needs in front of you that I deem to be the needs most pertinent to this Saints draft and the positions I thought they needed to address. I'll go through them quickly. Offensive line, more specifically center, was the big issue with the retirement of Max Unger. And so that's something that they needed to address in this draft. Also, keep in mind that Andrus Peat is on the last year of his deal. So you just needed some flexibility. A guy like Eric McCoy, who has played both guard and center, gives you exactly that. Wide receiver, I do not love what you have at wide receiver. I don't think you have enough. I think it's Michael Thomas, and then it's just the rest of the guys. It's just a bunch of other guys, and it's a lot of Jag guys at that. Speaking of which, Ted Ginn Jr. was someone you brought in to help take off a little bit of the load on Michael Thomas. He was injured last year, but when he's healthy, he gives you a little something. But when it's Keith, Kirkwood and all of these guys, it just isn't a group that scares anyone outside of Michael Thomas. And when you take him away, it really puts a lot of pressure on Drew Brees to try to squeeze it into some of these other guys. And just thought you needed an alpha, another guy that could come in and be a stud for you. There's a reason why you were sniffing around Des Bryant and Brandon Marshall and all these veteran wide receivers last year, because you knew you didn't have enough. And it did come back to haunt you a little bit against the Rams. And it almost bit you in the ass versus the Eagles. I mean, you didn't score a ton of points against those two defenses, and a lot of it was because your guys couldn't separate, other than Michael Thomas, and no one was going to allow Michael Thomas to beat them. So, thought you needed to do something at receiver. You chose not to. We'll see how that goes for you. Edge rusher, yep, you got Davenport last year. Yep, you still got Cam Jordan, and you got some stuff, but I thought you could have used some more depth as a team with edge rusher, so that's why that's there. Tight end, obviously, the big get in the offseason was Jared Cook Jr., but let me warn you, let me give you the Surgeon General's warning on Jared Cook Jr. You don't know what the hell you're going to get, okay? Jared Cook Jr. is like a box of chocolates. You just don't know what the hell you're going to get, all right? Last year was an aberration. The dude is talented. Let's not mince words here. The guy is talented. He can get the job done. Last year was a career year. Generally, dudes don't have career years at like 32. That's what he did last year. But I can tell you this much. The guy is a very athletically gifted tight end with size that can catch the football. Now, he may go back to being just same old Jared Cook and Jr. that will give you the occasional drops on a critical third down and won't be able to stay healthy all the time. He may go back to that guy, or he may just have figured it out, and he's the guy that the Raiders got the utmost production out of last year, and maybe some big years ahead of him, especially playing with a guy like Drew Brees. It's only a 2-year deal, but you still need more at the tight end position. That's essentially what I'm trying to say to you is, yep, it's cool you got Jared Cook Jr. To me, Drew Brees is at his best when the tight end position is legit. And Benjamin Watson, this is how bad it was last year. To me, your best 3 options to get the football to in this order: throwing the football, Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara, and Benjamin Watson. If that's your best options to get the football to, you're in trouble, okay? Those first 2 are legit options to get the football to. But your second option shouldn't be your running back out of the backfield, first and foremost. And your third option shouldn't be an 87-year-old tight end. So I'm just saying. I'm not saying. I'm just saying you could use some more help at tight end. That being said, the next needs safety. I just think you needed some more depth there. You've got some stuff. You've drafted some young guys over the years. Von Bell, all of the young guys, Marcus Williams. You've got a ton of young guys back there. You just needed some more depth. I don't think you have enough depth at safety, and I think you were able to accomplish that in this draft. And then off defensive line, obviously Sheldon Rankins tearing his Achilles in the playoff game versus the Philadelphia Eagles is a big loss. He's not going to be ready to start the season. So you did sign Malcolm Brown in the offseason and among other guys to help give you some depth along the defensive line. But I still think you could have used some more depth. So it wasn't a necessity. That's why it's so far at the back of the end of the line. But if you wanted to, if there was some value at defensive line at one of your picks and you wanted to throw that on the board, I would not have had a problem with it. So that's where we stand with what the Saints needed in this draft. Let's take offensive line off the board, though, as they were able to take care of their biggest need, as you can see with this pick here of Eric McCoy. I'll read you my quick synopsis of Eric McCoy: 6'4", 303 pounds, 33-inch arms. This guy had 39 consecutive starts at Texas A&M, 37 of which were at center, the other 2 at guard. So again, a little bit of experience at both positions. Smooth, versatile interior offensive linemen are rare commodities, especially interior offensive linemen who are usually rugged, rough, and plotty-like athletes with limitations that kick them inside. Then there are guys like NC State's Garrett Bradbury, who was selected in the first round by the Minnesota Vikings, and Texas A&M's Eric McCoy. McCoy is definitely the real McCoy. Easy mover, climbs to the second level with ease, fluid enough to handle the elite athletes inside like Quinnen Williams and Christian Wilkins, but still sturdy enough to stand up versus brutes like Dexter Lawrence. And the beauty of watching his tape was he got to go up against college football's best, the best of the best. There's no guessing as to how he'll do against this guy or that guy. The best that college football had to offer along the defensive line on the interior, this guy not only went up against them, but in times he dominated these guys. He held his own for sure at worst. And so while his hand placement can be inconsistent at times, his ability to mirror is not. McCoy will be a rock on the interior for years to come in the National Football League. This is an outstanding pick. The guy ran a 4.89 40, just in case you were wondering how athletically gifted this dude is. His ability to climb to the second level is uncanny. He has no problems out in space, locking onto a defender and getting him out of the way. Like I said, he mirrors very, very well. And I was shocked because generally when you get guys running 4.89s, that means they're a finesse, offensive lineman. They're not going to be able to be as strong as you need them to be, especially on the interior. Normally with these centers, they're the scoop guys. The guys that are running sub 5s, they're the scoop guys. They're the guys that they can scoop block you, but they're not going to be powerful enough to hold their ground at the point of attack, or at least you would think. Eric McCoy is one of those guys that actually has the finesse to his game, but still has the power and the girth and enough sand in his trunks to stand up against the big guys in the middle as well. So honestly speaking, he was my second best center on the board. I thought it was not a foregone conclusion that he wouldn't come off the board in the first round. And I was shocked when Green Bay took Elgton Jenkins before Eric McCoy because I thought McCoy was better than Jenkins. But it's tomatoes, bologna. It's really beauty's in the eye of the beholder. He only went 4 picks after Jenkins did to the Packers, but still, nonetheless, I thought that you got a steal here. And there's the reason why you traded up 14 whole picks to get your hands on McCoy, because this is a steal here in the second round. It really is. And so in the second round, 48th overall selection, offensive lineman out of Texas A&M, Eric McCoy for me is...
Hits it high! Hits it deep! It is out of here!
And his comp for me is Jason Kelsey, the longtime Philadelphia Eagles center that to me is one of the best in the league, if not the best center in the league right now as we speak. A guy that came into the league very undersized, built his body into about a 300-pound center with extreme athleticism. Kelsey's ability to run and still anchor the pivot position is what makes him the best center in the league. And I think Eric McCoy has that same kind of capability. 5 years from now, we may look at Eric McCoy as the best center in the league. And I think he has that capability in him. And so I really liked him and Garrett Bradbury in this draft. And you get yourself a steal here in the second round. So as we move on to the fourth round, 105th overall selection, Florida defensive back Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is the selection. So to me, you got yourself another steal here. Like, this guy didn't have any business being here for you in the fourth round. I actually had a late second round grade on him. I thought worst case scenario. And the way the draft shook out, the run on safeties didn't happen until the late stages of the second into the third round. So I figured, okay, he's about to get taken because now the safeties, the big boys at the safety position are getting taken. You know, the Juan Thornhills of the world and all of those guys are starting to come off the board. There were only 2 first round safeties, right? And those were my top 2 safeties in the draft. And so those guys came off the board in Darnell Savage, and he was the first safety taken by Green Bay. I thought he was the second best safety in the draft behind the Mississippi State safety, Jonathan Abram. And then after those guys, I thought, you know, you would see the Juan Thornhills and the Chauncey Gardner-Johnsons and those guys come off the board. And instead, Marquise Blair goes to the Seattle Seahawks in the second round. And then Juan Thornhill, and then all those guys come, and all these names started being called, and I didn't hear Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's name being called, and I'm like, what's going on here? And am I missing something? And I thought maybe there was something off the field or something that I missed that I couldn't be privy to because I didn't talk to this guy or I didn't talk to area scouts or something, but there wasn't. I just think teams valued other players better and more. I can tell you this. Before I get to his breakdown, 9 safeties were taken, or 8 safeties were taken before him. He was the 9th. I'm telling you right now, there weren't 8 better safeties in this draft than Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. That's crazy. So you got yourself a steal here, all right? That's what happens when other teams overstep their boundaries. Good football players fall, and other teams get great value. You got great value here. So Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, 5'11", 210 pounds. A lot of times when you see the artwork and the height and weight are wrong, I did it early on in the process, way before we got the official weights. I went with the weight that they had listed on their websites. You know, these schools give guys an extra inch or 2 and also a couple pounds or so. Again, disregard that. He's 5'11", 210, 4'4", 840, 36-inch vert, so he's an athlete. You get to see it on tape. I watched him in 2017 versus Florida State. I watched him in 2018 versus LSU. I watched him in 2018 versus Michigan, which was a hell of a football game. He was good in every single one of those games, but in different capacities. And so we'll get to all of that here in a second. An extremely versatile playmaking safety, CGJ, falls right in line with the looks of today's NFL safety. Looks like a cornerback, can play the nickel, will hit anything that moves, and can still drop 30 yards deep and play single high safety. Now, with the positives comes some of the negatives. He will miss some tackles, will give up throws underneath in the slot because he's a little too off and doesn't necessarily drive on the football as aggressively as you would like him to. Can be excessive with depth in his drops. And so what that does is it creates bigger holes and gaps in zone coverage that shouldn't be there. The zone should be nice and tight. The quarterback should feel like it's going to be tough to fit this football in here. Maybe I should turn this throw down. If you're dropping excessively, now there's a lot more space for a quarterback to feel brazen enough to drive a football in there and be able to complete it. But talent, playmaking ability, speed at which he plays is outstanding, which makes for a smooth transition to the NFL for Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. So I look at this guy, and you watch him in the Florida State game, and they used him in 2017 more so as a free safety, as a single high that could roam the football field, red line to red line, and was tearing guys up. It was a display on how to dislodge man from ball from a free single high free safety position. Then you fast forward to 2018, and he was more down in the box, more of a nickel, a big nickel over the slot. And that's how they utilized him in 2018 more. In the LSU game, he was blitzing. First play of the game, you turn on that LSU game, and he's blitzing from the nickel on a run blitz, and he's got a tackle for loss on a 3-yard loss. It was beautiful. I mean, they used him in a number of different ways versus LSU. And then you turn, and he had a couple of picks versus Florida Michigan in the final game of his collegiate career. And he was just everywhere. And it was a beautiful play where he's in zone coverage over the middle of the field. He baits Shea Patterson into throwing the football deep on a deep post on the backside bang 8. He thinks it's wide open. And Chauncey Gardner-Johnson then turns, pivots. And it's that drill that you see at the combine when they're running that post corner drill where they have to flip their hips and turn and run and track the football in the air. He does it beautifully, goes and snatches the football out of the air, picks it off. It's a gorgeous play. This guy is talented, man. And he finds the football. And it just seems like wherever the ball is, that's where Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is. And that's a really good trait to have at this level, because when you're around the ball enough, good things happen for you, and turnovers generally seem to find this guy. And so this is a great pickup. Let's take safety off the board, as you were able to knock that down. And I'm not really quite sure if the Saints don't necessarily just see him as a nickel, as a big nickel that they can stick in the slot and feel good about. They may love their safeties and think that this guy's a nickel more so than a safety, but right now we're going to classify him as a safety, but I think they think he's a slot guy. I think they feel like they can put him in the slot and he'll flourish there. We'll see. I don't know if he's consistent enough to be an every down in, down out nickel in this league, but we'll see. For me, the comp here is Kevin Byard, the Tennessee Titans safety out of Middle Tennessee State that had 8 interceptions 2 years ago, 4 more last year, 12 for his career in just 3 years. The guy's always around the football, not afraid to come up and hit you, but can drop deep and make plays on the football. I feel the same way about Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. And so here in the 4th round, 105th pick overall, defensive back out of Florida, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson for me is...
Hits one high! Hits it deep! It is out of here!
So this next pick, 6th round, 177th selection overall, defensive back out of Rutgers, Saquon Hampton is the pick. So Saquon Hampton is a guy that I'm not necessarily in love with his game. To me, he's too passive aggressive. He's the guy that he wants to follow protocol all the time. Like, this is my my analogy to what he does on the football field. There's times when you need to be aggressive. You know, like, say you're a police officer, you know, and this may not be the best analogy, but this is the first thing that came to my mind. Say you're a police officer and there's a slight public disturbance at Walmart. It's really minuscule. It's like a 77-year-old guy that doesn't want to leave the store and he's being a little petulant. And you feel like, I should be able to handle this by myself. I don't need to call backup here. Saquon Hampton is the guy that wants to stay outside and wait for backup before he goes in to try to handle the situation. Like, bro, go in there and subdue the 77-year-old guy and get him outside and talk to him, put him in his car and tell him to go home, all right? Or if he's with a family member, hey, guy, get in the car. Let's go. Come on. Stop being a nuisance. Get in the car and go home, all right? No, he's going to sit in the parking lot. He's going to wait for Andy and Tom to show up before he takes his ass inside the store to go get the 77-year-old guy. Like, bruh, you don't need backup here. Go do your job. And that's how I feel about Saquon Hampton. Like, bruh, you don't need to wait. Okay, that running back's coming outside to you. You don't need to wait 7 yards for him to run to you and eat up 7 yards of space and gain 9 yards on the play when you could have made the tackle at 2 yards. Like, don't wait. Go. He's so passive aggressive, but then it's crazy. And he's usually passive aggressive when he's far back, when he's off the line of scrimmage. Then when he's up as an 8th defender in the box, as a more of a strong and less of a free, then he's uber aggressive. And you're like, bro, where was that 3 snaps ago? When you allowed the running back to pick up 11 yards when you could have tackled him for a 3-yard gain? Where the hell was that at? So that shit drives me nuts. So that you got to take the good with the bad. And there's some Carfax information that I got to give you. I'll give you that in a second. But anyway, 6'1", 206 pounds, ran a 4.48, so there's a little bit of athleticism here along with some length and size. So there's some good traits here right off the bat. A passive-aggressive safety with good size, ball skills, and tackling ability when he decides to go. All right, while his role at Rutgers was more of a free safety with some nickel ability, his NFL niche may be as a box defender with the ability to play some underneath zones and tight ends man-to-man. Doesn't have the twitchiness nor aggressive nature necessary to consistently play in the slot or as a single high free safety. So the Carfax injury report here is 2 shoulder injuries that really hampered him in both 2016 and 2017. Now, he had a clean bill of health in 2018, but in 2016 and 2017, he missed a combined 9 games in both of those seasons combined with shoulder injuries, 2 different shoulder injuries at that. So that's something to keep an eye on for a safety that has to tackle shoulder injuries. Not a good thing. It may be something that lingers, but again, he was healthy last year. You're hoping that he stays that way. I'm necessarily, like I said, I don't love this selection here, but it's the 6th round. He's here for a reason in the 6th round. Like, I'm not going to get bent out of shape. It's not like you spent a 3rd round pick on this guy. It's a 6th round pick. And so you get flaws in the 6th round. That's why he's sitting here for you in the 6th round. I don't think he's a bad player. I mean, I saw some really good ball skills. I saw a guy that, when aggressive, looks the part of an NFL safety. The problem is he's not aggressive enough for me, but that's nor here nor there. In the 6th round, 177th selection overall, safety out of Rutgers. Saquon Hampton for me is so my comp for Saquon Hampton is Clinton Dix. When I looked at Clinton Dix as a Redskins fan coming over from Green Bay, I was ecstatic. I'm thinking this guy's going to make all types of plays and he's going to come up and he's going to be. And my biggest knock on Clinton Dix coming out of Alabama was he was too passive as a safety. He didn't want to hit guys and he was waiting and he was too apprehensive to pull the trigger too many times. That was a knock for me coming out of Alabama. Well, when he became a Washington Redskin, I got to see it up close. This is a guy that, instead of attacking a running back who's running at him, he's the guy that wants to retreat. He wants to run backwards until that running back finally meets him 37 yards down the field, and then he wants to try to make a tackle. Bro, what are you doing? Go make a play. And so that reluctantness plus the size and the ball skills, Saquon Hampton to me is a splitting image of Clinton Dix. And so we'll see what you're able to get out of him moving forward. But that kind of passive aggressive approach drives me nuts. As we go to the 7th round, 231st pick overall, tight end out of Notre Dame, L.A.B. Mack is the pick. So, a lot of people, is it Alizé? Is it Alize? Look, until he actually gives clarification, because as a Notre Dame fan, we were waiting for clarification. Most people I've heard that are in the know call him Alize Mack. That's what I'm going with. I don't generally see the accent mark at the end, which would be Alizé. I think that's what his mom was going for, which... Really, we're naming our kids after alcoholic beverages. Like, what are we doing right now? But let's just go with Alize. That's what I'm accustomed to hearing. And people that were in the know called him Alize. I'm thinking that's what his name is. So we'll go with Alize Mack. 6'4", 249, 34-inch arms, ran a 4.7 at the combine, 36-inch vert. Look, I'm a Notre Dame Fighting Irish fan. I don't even need the tape to tell me what I can tell you just watching every Notre Dame Fighting Irish game over the last 3 years. Academically ineligible back in 2016. And this is a guy that was a high-level recruit out of Bishop Gorman out in Vegas. Everyone was excited because, at Notre Dame, we don't have a lot at Notre Dame, okay? We're good for a once-in-a-blue moon linebacker, Manti Te'o, obviously Jalen Smith. We're good for one of those every 4 or 5 years. We're good, for a really good safety, Harrison Smith, every blue moon again. You'll get one of those from us. we're generally good for two positions: offensive line and tight end. All right, if you're looking for one, and then we'll sprinkle in the occasional Stephon Tuitt, or if we got this year, Jerry Tillery, we'll sprinkle in one of those defensive linemen every now and again. But generally, don't come to us looking for skill guys, running backs. We get lucky every now and again. Running back in Detroit, who I love catching the football out of the backfield. And then, like a Golden Tate every now and again. It's rare though. We don't have those. This year we had Miles Boykin. But generally speaking, tight end is what we do. Okay, we don't get tight end wrong. We'll send a tight end every year, every other year to the league and expect him to produce. Same with the offensive line. And so Alize Mack was supposed to be the next guy in line. We've been churning out tight ends left and right, and he was disappointing at Notre Dame. And his talents, the production never met the talent. And now again, we didn't have the best quarterbacking situation either. But let me just give you a quick synopsis of Alize Mack. NFL tight end frame with some tough contested catchability, can separate in a straight line, seams, wheel routes, goals, that sort of thing, but doesn't have the dynamic route running ability you'd expect when you look at his skill set. Is tough as nails when it comes to being a receiver. Like, there's a catch versus Michigan in that game where he runs a wheel route up the sideline, ball's put in there beautifully, but the safety comes over and just drills him in his head. I don't know how he was able to come back into that game because he had a concussion. There's no doubt about it. He was concussed. Somehow he's able to come back in the game, but he was down for a little while after the hit. It was a massive hit. But he's the guy that will take that shot to catch the football. But then, all right, get this. But wants no parts of blocking either in the run game or pass pro. Like, he wants nothing to do with blocking at all whatsoever. If seen as a detachable mismatch, Matt could have some value, but if you're looking for the complete package at the tight end position, unless his mindset changes to where he's willing to do everything, you've got the wrong guy. So here's a dude that never really put up the numbers that we knew he was fully capable of at Notre Dame. And so he's got talent, man. I'm not going to sit here and act as if he doesn't. I really like Alize Mack. I think that he can help someone. I think it's a great destination for him because let's take tight end off the board real quick as you get Alize Mack, and I think that's a need that you had coming into this draft. And I love this fit in New Orleans because Drew Brees is going to get him the football. And even if he doesn't block, you've got tight ends. You've got like 19 tight ends on the roster. You can find a couple of guys that can block. You're fine in that regard. But Alize Mack has a specific set of skills that can benefit a team like New Orleans who wants to throw the football to their tight ends. I expect him to make your roster. I really do. And he's going to have to give better effort as a blocker, though. That bothers me. And you don't want tells in this league. And right now, with the way his game is set up, if he's in the game, there's no way they're running the football. It's just no way, not with the way that he blocks or doesn't block. So this is really solid value in the 7th round because this is not 7th round talent. But the production is 7th round production, and some of the things you see on tape is 7th round worthy. So here in the 7th round, 231st pick overall, tight end out of Notre Dame, Alize Mack for me is so my comp for him is Virgil Green, the tight end out of Nevada that was drafted by the Denver Broncos that has immense potential, but it never really materialized. The guy was uber athletic. Could run in a straight line, could do some things, but it just never really fully developed into the guy that everyone thought he could be. Same thing can be said for Alize Mack coming into the league. The difference is he could actually come in and change the narrative back to what it was coming out of high school, which is this guy's a big-time talent. So we'll see what happens with him, but right now I see him as a Virgil Green type coming into the league. And your final pick in this draft, 7th round, 244th overall selection, linebacker out of Idaho. Potato, they can't say no. Caden Ellis is the selection. Sorry for my outburst there. I couldn't help myself. 6'2", 238, 33-inch arms, 4'5", 40, 34.5-inch vert. So you're dealing with a guy with not only ex-NFL pedigree running through his blood, but a guy that's an athlete. So with some solid size. The son of an ex-NFLer, first rounder at that, Caden Ellis is a prime candidate for Pam Mom. And Pam Mom, for me, is proficient at many, master of none. The ex-Idaho Vandal played linebacker, edge rusher, wide receiver, tight end during his career, and many of those positions overlapping one another, okay? So it's not like, oh, he was playing wide receiver and tight end, and then he switched over to the defensive side of the football. No, he was playing linebacker. They were using him as an edge rusher, and then they would get the football on offense, and he would go out there and he would catch the football as a receiver and a tight end. So this guy was playing multiple positions. Sound like anybody already on this Saints roster? All right. Now, while he isn't great at any of them, he's solid enough at all of them, coupled with his athleticism to get an NFL sniff. So what I'm saying to you, and let's take edge rusher, because I think that's what the Saints probably see him being the best at. That's what I see him being the best at getting to the quarterback. I think that's probably going to be his best thing that he does, and the thing that's going to allow him to have an outside shot at making this roster, along with him playing some phenomenal special teams. But, I mean, think about a guy already on your roster at the quarterback position in Taysom Hill and all of the different things that he brings to the table. Quarterback, special teams, personal protector, fake field goal guy, running back, read option quarterback, you name it, short yardage guy, he brings it to the table. This is something like that on the defensive side with Caden Ellis. The Saints are morphing into the NFC version of the New England Patriots. The more you can do, the better chance you have of sticking on an NFL roster. And so it wouldn't shock me if Caden Ellis came in and he showed them his ability to rush the quarterback, showed them a little bit of ability to play the linebacker position. And then they said, hey, Caden, come over here and show us what you can do at tight end a little bit. And he showed them the ability to maybe block a little bit, catch it a little bit. And they're like, hey, we could do some things with this dude, man. And so I'm just saying, he's got an outside shot of making this roster. He's got NFL bloodlines with his dad, Luther Ellis, the former first-round pick of the Detroit Lions. And they've got a lot of things. He's got a lot of things going for him. He's an athlete. He plays multiple positions. I'm not saying the Saints, I'm just saying they love guys that can do a lot. He may be able to crack this roster because of all the different things he does, but I see him first and foremost as an edge rusher above all else. So in the 7th round, 244th pick overall, linebacker out of Idaho, potato, they can't say no, Caden Ellis for me is. So 5-player draft, nice compacted draft. Go in, get the players you identify as elite talents, bring them in and move on. I don't have a problem with this. Like I said, the Saints are a Super Bowl contending team. They proved that a season ago. They've got a lot of young players, but they've also got some veterans at all the right spots. And it really, if you look at it, this is more of a young team than it is a veteran team. So they've done a really good job of bringing in a lot of young talent on this football team, but they've got the veterans mixed in there, especially at the linebacker and defensive line positions. And so you look at what they've compiled as a roster. You add in a couple of guys that you think can come in and help right now with your first 2 picks. And again, for you not to have a first-round pick and then have a late second and be able to parlay that second into an earlier second by trading up, but also getting a 4th-round pick back because you had to give up your 3rd rounder to move up in the 2nd round, but also getting a 4th rounder back, which turned into Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. I'd say that's a hell of a day's work for the Saints. Those first 2 picks to me were steals in McCoy and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. And then I think the rest of the draft are developmental guys that you bring in-house and you see what you can get out of them and you see if they're good enough to crack your roster in Hampton, Mack, and, of course, Ellis. So solid draft. I think they add value here with those first 2 picks in particular. And I'm anxious to see how those players perform in New Orleans. I really feel like Chauncey Gardner-Johnson might have that same role that you had carved out for the ex-Texas defensive back that you had on your team in Kenny Vaccaro. I think they're going to see him as a little bit of a Vaccaro type of piece around the line of scrimmage, in the slot, just moving him around all over the football field. I think that's what you envision Chauncey Gardner-Johnson being on your football team. But we'll see what happens. And in any event, here's the score for the Saints in the 2019 draft wrap-up. So that's going to do it for your man Louie Tee here on the Louie Tee Network's coverage of the 2019 NFL Draft during the draft wrap-up series of the New Orleans Saints. Remember, if you haven't already done so, what are you waiting on? Subscribe to the Louie Tee Network for more great content. We're not just covering one team, we're covering all 32 teams in the National Football League. And also, remember, if you haven't checked out the Louie Tee Network podcast, that is some great stuff. That's available on all platforms: Google Music Play, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts. There's also TuneIn, there's Spotify, there's the website LouieTeeNetwork.net. It's everywhere, so check out the Louie Tee Network podcast. I'm your man Louie Tee, signing off. Remember, if it's not your man T, it's not the best NFL coverage. It could be. Until next time, have a good one.
Louie Tee Network.